Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today, we're back in the Minotaur, and we're here for a reason. Not to show off the general awesomeness that is the Minotaur, but to actually go and look at her captain. And the reason we're doing that is because this captain now has the armor-piercing cap shell skill. And this is something I've been excited about for a very long time, because this is the first time I'm actually using this skill on any captain, and I'm very curious as to what it does. Now, if we look at the actual statistics that it tells us in the game, it says that it increases the maximum penetration of the main battery by 5%, and it increases the power sustainability. So what does that mean? Well, penetration is relatively straightforward, right? You've got armor-piercing shells, and they tell us how much armor they can go through before they blow up, and that is used to determine if we've actually get a full penetration or a half penetration, or if we're even just bouncing off the armor to see if we've done any damage. The power sustainability, as far as I understand it, means that, well, your shells do lose penetration power as they fly through the air because they slow down and, general air resistance and things like that. So the further away the target is, the less penetration power your shell has. And that is the factor that this captain skill increases. So given that we've got these two factors increased by 5 and 10%, I would generally expect my numbers of damage that I'm doing to increase kind of by a similar factor. Just because we might get a couple more full penetrations where we used to get half penetrations, we might get a little more half penetrations where we used to get bounces, things like that. So in order to try that out, I'm gonna have a bit of data collection. So we'll be going through 3 ships, target ships, that I've tried to, get my hands on relatively similar distances, and we'll be trying this out so we get some data behind what we're actually going to be doing here. Now, the first ship that we're targeting here is the Zhou, the tier 10 Japanese cruiser. And, well, let the shell go. And we get a couple of semi-pens. Now we're at about 7 kilometer range. The shells are still plunging in from the top there. We start getting some full pens. So you see the 500s are full pens. The 251 here is a semi-pen because he only does 50% damage. And a couple more full. So the 502s are full pens. We had a bounce there at that time as well. This is without armor, without this captain skill. This is just our baseline. And again, depending on where we hit her, we get a couple of bounces. Now we're doing the same thing with the armor-piercing cap shell at a similar distance of around about 7 kilometers, a little bit closer. And again, the 500s are the actual full penetrations. And this starts looking a little bit better, at least just he's broadsiding. He's not bow in anymore as he was in the other game. Here's come a couple more bow in shots. So there we go. This is a semi-pen. This is much closer now. We still get the occasional semi-pen, especially when we're hitting the main armor. So the main armor belt. So even at this range, even with the armor-piercing cap shell, we can't punch through the main armor belt. We only get semi-penetrations. So we don't have enough penetrating power with these 150 mils to go through the main armor belt. Now here let's just have a look at the statistics. So what I've done is I've basically gone through this salvo by salvo and counted how many full pens, how many semi-pens, and how many bounces I did have, and then compared armor-piercing cap shell skill without armor-piercing cap shell skill. And in terms of just kind of direct numbers, I've seen an increase of 8.2%. Now, you obviously have to take into account that I can't 100% reproduce these experiments. The distance is going to be quite off. There's obviously a random number in there. The dispersion is different. Sort of things like that. So we'll take this with a grain of salt, and we'll just take this as one data point and see if this kind of holds true with the other ships. For our next target, we're shooting at something a little larger, at a Yamato. Now we are at the first shots are coming in without the armor-piercing cap shell skill. And as you can see, we're cleanly bouncing anything off the main armor belt. And we tried it a little bit further away, so the shells actually start coming in from the top. Once we hit the superstructure, we can actually start doing some penetrations, but as soon as we're aiming a little bit lower and hitting the main armor belt, then we're bouncing again, clean. So in general, you'll always want to aim higher and try to get the shots in from the top, because if something like this happens, most of your shots are just going to bounce off. Whereas these kind of, once they hit a little bit in the top, actually go through. And yeah, still got a couple more salvos to go here. And again, you see anything that hits the main armor belt is not going to even semi-pen. Whereas we get semi-penetrations pretty much when we hit the top. Now we're doing the same thing with the armor-piercing cup shell. And we still get bounces on the main armor belt, but we do get some semi-pens as well. So some of our shots actually manage to penetrate around the main armor belt, which makes targeting battleships a hell of a lot easier, because you don't need to aim that much anymore. So in terms of total numbers, we see that our bounces were relatively stable, but we do get a couple more full pens, and we actually got less semi-pens overall. Now again, these numbers completely depend on how I've managed to hit, how I've been aiming, distances and such. But in terms of total damage, I got a 14.8% increase. Now again, there's an absolute variance in these numbers. What I'm interested here to see is that yes, we have an increase. I think it's a bit high. This might have been just this chance at this point, but in general, you can aim a bit lower. As you've seen in the second round, I have aimed a little bit lower, and I have managed to get some more semi-pens around the armor belt. And I think it makes just hurting battleships in general a bit easier, because you do get definitely more full penetrations on the plunging shots with these things. Now for our next target, we're going to be shooting the Baltimore, the American Tier 9 heavy cruiser, which is relatively well armored. And again, we're going to try out and see what kind of difference this makes. Here we actually managed to score a Citadel. We got quite lucky at point blank range. But mostly if we hit her on the armor belt, we do only semi-pens. We can't get through. The same story as we had with the Zhou, with these 150mm armor piercing guns. But we do relatively reliable damage. Now we're going to be doing the same thing again with the armor piercing cup shell skill enabled. I'm shooting at a Baltimore at point blank range. And we are getting relatively good numbers. So I'm going to again try to target the armor belt, and there again we get the same sort of semi-pen. Yeah, so we get the semi-pens on the armor belt reliably, but even with the APCS shell we can't punch through the armor belt. So again, against enemy cruisers with these shells, you have to aim higher to hit the superstructure, even if you're at point blank range. Otherwise you'll not be doing the damage that you could be doing. So in terms of statistics, I have definitely gotten more full pens, more semi-pens, and less bounces with the armor piercing cup shell. And let's ignore the Citadel, because that is really just a one-off chance, more or less. But it's a similar picture as I had with the Zhou. If you are having the skill enabled, all in all you have I had a 7.6% increase, which is very close to what I had with the Zhou in terms of increase. Now, one thing that people have been concerned about is destroyers. So let's try that out first without the armor piercing cup shell skill, and we've got ourselves a Fletcher here. So people have been saying, oh yeah, but 150mm AP can overpen. So the 520 is a full pen. An overpen would be 1/4 of that, so about 125. So far, this is without the skill. We are getting very, very reliable full pens against the Fletcher here. And if I'm actually managing to hit that thing. And then we're going to try out the same thing again with the armor piercing cup shell. And again, there we've got ourselves a Fletcher to shoot at, and we are not over penetrating the Fletcher. Now we also try this with the Yugumo, with the Japanese Tier 9, which is probably a bit less well armored than the Fletcher. And again, here we are not getting any over penetrations. We're only getting full pens on this enemy destroyer. So in summary, what does this skill mean for us? Well, okay, we've tried this out with a Minotaur, so with a 150mm armor-piercing shell. And specifically with the Minotaur's 150mm armor-piercing shells. But in general, I would expect somewhere around a 7 to 10% increase in total damage you can do with these guns using this skill for this 150mm shell. And it makes targeting battleships a bit easier because you get less bounces in general. And you normally don't fight battleships in the Minotaur at 5km range. If you're doing it, you would use your torpedoes. But even at long ranges, this is kind of important because you have such a high fire rate in the Minotaur. So if I can do 7 to 10% more damage in my Minotaur overall with this skill, then this is a really, really good, valuable thing to have. Now, this doesn't tell us anything about the behavior towards citadels, because with 150mm, unless we're firing at other light cruisers, we're very, very unlikely to citadel anything. So we're going to have to do the same exercise again with something that has a bit of a larger caliber. So once I get to, I don't know, one of the battleship's captains, I get them up to that skill, we'll be doing another video for science, and we'll be trying to see what the rate of citadels and just the general penetration on larger caliber guns is going to be in terms of these armor-piercing cap shells. And obviously, we've got the other side. So my Des Moines has a relatively high ranking captain, and the light cruiser line on the American cruisers has a captain that I'm ranking up. So if I'm getting to the IFHE, the high explosive improvement shell skill, then we'll be doing the whole thing again, and we'll be seeing what the impact of these is. But so far, this kind of matches my expectations, and it's definitely a very useful skill to have. So that's it for today. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye.